I appreciate all the attention to this safety meeting. This is going to be our season opener 2021 safety meeting. This year is a little bit different than last year's because we've been flying. We as an organization have been flying all throughout the winter. So I'm really excited to see the interest here for the safety meeting. So a quick agenda tonight. Slide, can you, Mark? Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So quick agenda. You're not gonna hear from me very much. I think it's important that we let the leaders of the group say their piece. And so we're gonna see, alternatively throughout the night, we're gonna hear from our president, from the lead of our ground operations, the lead of our aerotow operations, and the lead of our instruction and gliding operations. So this should be a good intro. We've booked 7 to 9 p.m., but we're hoping to be done here in 90 minutes. So it gives us some time at the end to ask questions and write down some notes for any of those that need to do that. So let's move to the next slide. And at this point, I'll pass the mic over to Mark Stanfield, the president of Hood River Soaring.
Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending our required annual safety meeting for 2021. We're coming out of finishing our 5th year of operations and going into our 6th year. So we're going from kindergarten to 1st grade, and we've got an amazing tow team that's running strong, and we got a new chief tow pilot this year, Ty Sibley. He'll be continuing to help build that team. We've got a lot of interest. Seems like every time that tow plane goes up on the weekend that my phone starts blowing up of guys who want to learn to tow. But on the weekend, I don't answer my phone and I don't answer emails because I'm out flying. So get a hold of Ty if you're interested in that. And the next thing was we really needed to build a CFIG team, and that's coming along nicely. Jeff Curtis is going to go down to Arizona and finish up. Steve Frisbee has taken over as chief flight instructor, which is awesome. I've taken over as director of operations. So next year, come February, March, I will not be the president. I'll probably remain director of operations. I'll probably try to stay on the board if you guys will have me. We submitted for a large FAA grant asking for $126,000. That's going to offer a really cool program to the schools and offer 18 flight scholarships. And we had all congressional support from all the senators and Congress representatives of both Oregon and Washington. And the head of that program from the FAA called me this week to just kind of check in. So that's a good thing. We'll find out in September about that. We're on track to buy another tow plane, possibly this week or next week, because that is our weakest link, and we cannot have only one tow plane. So let's go on to growth and changes. We've got quite a new board this year, and Kelly Wickby has done some amazing work with our youth program, our growing youth program. And from that, it is time that we've introduced some standard operating hours. We're still the same organization that if you can find a tow pilot and you can either get yourself towed or get some ground person, you can go out there 7 days a week and fly. But we're going to now have standard operating hours and ground crew. We're going to attempt to. It's something to work towards. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 8:30 to 16:30 is essentially the operating hours. But the field managers, and we're all going to become field managers, will be there from 8 to 5. And that's going to have 2 shifts, 8 to 12:30 and 12:30 to 5 p.m. So that's a half hour for setup and a half hour teardown. And we've got Brett, Stan, and Ron that'll be providing checklists on what to do and how to do that. And so now all club members, this came through with the way this came about was A lot of risk management was being reviewed with all the youth members out there, and
Join the meeting.
all the youth members were out there, and so some of them are in work study, not all. Just because you're a youth member doesn't mean you're in work study. And so with all the risk management and all the operations and how busy it is with other power traffic, it is time, and it's unfortunate that it wasn't set this way from the beginning, but since we're a young organization, this was proposed and passed, and until there's a better way presented, this is what we're going to do. So if you're a full member, or the only two members exempt from this at the moment are tow pilots and the reciprocal members of Willamette Valley Story Club, but all the other members will every quarter need to do 2 half shifts, and you could do 1 whole day a quarter, or you can just split it up. And so the quarters are March to May, June to August, September to November. December through February, the standard days are only going to be Saturday and Sunday. Let's see here. If you're not on the schedule that quarter, I'll take you off from Team Up to Fly Up, and that starts May 1st. We'll explain more about that. You can buy your day. You can pay $80 per half day, so $160 for the full day. Let's see here. Moving next. We're going to move towards the field manager's kind of like a station. We'll try to keep the field manager placed on the corner by the L33. And so you could park your car there or put a pop-up tent or whatnot, as long as you can tie it down and the wind doesn't blow it away. And essentially, then you'll have some ground support and preferably one person helping maybe do wing running or recovery, and another person more helping move planes from the tie down or to the tie down area. But if you're right there on the corner by the L33 or between the Russ's house and the L33, you can essentially view everything. And so when there's somebody to be trained, either for the new ground badge program or something else, preferably a chief field manager is going to be handling that, such as Stan, Brett, or Ron, and the field manager will be mostly kind of centrally located. If we don't, obviously, we don't have ground support, then they'll probably have to jump in. The idea is to have at least kind of 2 ground support personnel. More are welcome. And like I said, 1 for runway launch and retrieval, 1 for helping tie, untie gliders, welcome scenic passengers. And that whole welcoming scenic passengers, as we've gotten some interest from youths that are not 13 yet, and so we're allowing them to be associate members, and their parents are interested, so they may start to set up a store and selling things and food and things like that, which will be great. And so that'll kind of free up a ground person. Most of this ground support will be made up by the youth members, especially as they're going to be trying to work their work study hours. Now they can sign up for 1 or 2 blocks each day, and I'll get to the blocks. There's basically 4 blocks in a day. You can see it there. No more than 2 youth members per block. Okay, it's too much to manage. There's a lot of risk out there. So if someone's already on a block, don't sign up and don't put on the orange vest. You can kind of help back, but other than that, don't be near the runway. Associate members' parents are encouraged to help and sign up on blocks with their youth or another youth. That's fine. The ground support must check in and must check out with the field manager. And if you're going to be in work study, they'll have to sign that off. Okay. We don't, and more about that later. So we're going to start launching kind of right now 4 instruction blocks. So youth, if you're going to sign up, you can sign up from 8 to 10:30, 10:30 to 12:30, 12:30 to 14:30, and then 14:30 or 2:30 p.m. to 1700, 5 p.m. field close. So those are, at the moment, those are the main instruction blocks for the K-21, for the either for a club member to take it or a instructor to work with a youth or adult student. Those are also the blocks that we expect the youth members to sign up on. So the field managers are shifts, morning shift or afternoon shift, or you could do your your 2 required shifts all in one day. And the ground support can sign up in blocks. But training, we have launched a new program called Ground Badge Program, which will be explained more later. This is basically new member orientation for youth or adult members, and it's basically step 1, making sure you got a government issued photo ID. This helps this instructor out. That's kind of more for the youth. Most adults have that. Step 2, you learn how to fill out Team Up. You learn how to fill out Team Up is our sign up program for either running ground or renting a aircraft, and then for the flight entry form, and that's how we get paid and keep the organization running. And then step 3 is actually doing the wing runners course on the SSA, and you can even submit and get a badge now for that. And then you do step 4, which is actually come out and you work a few different days with chief field office manager to really work how the field works, see how the field works. And once the chief field manager is really feeling like, okay, yeah, you could kind of get along on the day, then they'll sign you off. And at that point, you can a new member can go to get their initial Condor lesson on the basic axis of flight, and then finish up your IACRA for your student pilot certificate, and then go to step 6, which is getting your initial flight. So and there's going to be some more about that later. The youths have already had a very thorough training on the new ground badge program, but it's essentially a club orientation or Hood River Soaring organization orientation, and situational awareness and safety around the field. Like I said, number 2 down here, chief field managers will be developing a training list for field setup, field close checklist. And then if you're already, a lot of us adults are already, what we used to use the term QFOP, qualified field operator, something. We're getting rid of that term. But if you don't know how to run the field that day, and it's your field manager day coming up, get with the chief field manager. Okay, my last slide. So again, you'll need to fill out under the soaring your proficiency plan, essentially your back in the saddle plan. Many of you are already current, and that's fine. But let me let me stop my share, and I'm going to pull up a review of this for everyone. There we go. Okay, so everyone should be looking at the Hood River Soaring website. Is that coming through?
Not yet, Mark. I'm getting a bunch of crosshatches on a otherwise blank screen.
Okay.
Your system does that thing when you share where if it's got a window on top, it shows that paired and crosshatched, which is most of the screen at the moment, it looks like to me.
Oh, really? That's unfortunate.
Mark, I can bring it up too.
If you want to bring it up, Mike,
Okay.
that'd be great.
All right, how's this looking, everybody?
Yep, it's up. You're up on the team up schedule.
Okay, so this is when you go into member resources, there's the team up for people to sign up. Super easy. Team up is very easy. There's some videos that make it a lot more complicated. You click in the spot, Mike, if you want to click on, yeah, click on Field Manager. You put your name in there, you put your start time, your end time. It requires you to put your first and last name and your phone number. And so you can do that on any slot for anything. Very easy. Thank you, Mike. And there it saves it. Perfect. Okay, and then now if you'll go up to the Soaring Proficiency Plan.
So yeah, go to the operations manual. My on.
Yeah, so again, if you go to number 2 there, pilot currency and safety review certification. And so everyone, starting May 1st, well, you can start working on it tonight after you've done this, but if you don't have this filled out by May 1st, you're not flying the tow plane, you're not getting towed behind it, you're not flying any of the equipment, you're not getting a lesson, okay? So Mike, if you'll click on that, and basically what you're declaring in this is that you've viewed this meeting, whether you've watched it live or you've watched the recording we'll put out, and you've reread all the operating rules. And so that's what you're declaring right here. If you'll click next. And then here we re-ask for your emergency contact information. And then next, when your last flight review was. And your last 3 glider flights. Some of you may be current already. It's going to ask you if you've attended the meeting for the current year, and that's asking for tonight's meeting. And then you're back in the saddle plan. Let's say you're not really current. You could choose to just do 3,000 foot tow and 2 patterns in the 126, you know, and go get current. If you want to work with a flight instructor, you can click on the second button and we'll get a hold of you. And if you've had your 3 current flights or if you've had 3 flights in a glider in the past 90 days, we're going to consider you current. And then if you want to discuss something else, you can say other. And oh, okay. So here is your signups for your field manager shifts, and so we basically have 1 month here. So you just really have to do 1/2 shift in May, which would be great. Get everybody rolling, and then you'll have to put 2 in here for June through August, and then a new form will come out for the fall. Mike, what should we have tow pilots and Willamette Valley Soaring Club members put here?
Just
May 1st date or something.
Yeah, just fill it out with a date that's obviously just put like a 1900 or something like that, so it's sort of obvious that you. And then we'll put a column for notes.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can just say that you can say why you're not going to be fulfilling a shift.
Okay. All right. And then go next. And that's tow pilot only. If you're also a tow pilot, but you're a full member flying gliders, you still have to do the shifts. Okay. Next. Hood River Soaring Proficiency Plan. This here is where you're saying you've read the operations manual. Okay. And here's the release of liability. Please, you're basically by putting your name and date here, and if you're younger than 18, you'll have to have your parent type their name down there. But the statement above says, I certify that I have read and fully understand the Hood River Soaring waiver and release of liability in its entirety, and that this reading or review is current with the date of my signature below. And there, if you click on that, you can go and read release of liability. And this is mostly just, we want to just remind everybody that there are risks with flying. And of course, we're all trying to do the best we can to mitigate that. Okay, Mike, if you'll go next. And that's it. That'll come to us, and basically you're good to go. You're good to sign up on Team Up and go fly. Okay, if we can go back to the slides. Let's see. There we go. Okay, are the slides back up?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Let me make this full screen. Not from beginning, from current slide. Okay, so that's essentially what all that steps 1 through 5 are showing. And then I just basically wanted to inform everyone that I've been talking with Bert Compton, who is the Soaring Safety Foundation officer and helps run safety reviews for organizations. And he's coming out. We looked at a weekend in August and a weekend in September, and we think it's going to be the September weekend following the fly-in. So like the 16th, 17th, 18th, something like that. But he'll come out and spend a whole day with us. He'll probably the night before he'll meet with us, like the officers and things, and kind of learn about the history of the operation and find out what we think's going well and what we're having challenges with. And he'll observe the day, and then he'll get back together with us at the end of the day and go through everything. He's done like 121 of these. These are based on this whole thing is based on studies done in like Sweden with soaring organizations. And he asked me, he said, are you guys kind of being required to do this? And I said, no. We're just growing rapidly. And this is a year of putting a lot of processes and safety processes into place. And so he was super excited that we're just kind of trying to be forward thinkers. And so that'll be an interesting weekend. That's it for me. Thank you. I'm going to click the next slide.
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next slide, please. So HRS leadership, we've had a little bit, as Mark mentioned, there's been a few changes here. You can see we have our club directors and officers, and we also started using committee chairs. So you'll see a lot of the directors and officers are chairing committees, and you can see that in the column in the middle. And then the club instructors are on the right. All our CFIGs that Steve, I apologize to Steve that his name is misspelled here, FRISBY. He's our new chief flight instructor. And of course, Mark will be out at the field a lot, and Jeff and Frank will be up, I'm sure. And then we also see Mike Bamberg and John Newell occasionally out at the airfield as well. One note here, yeah, that's fine. COVID-19. So the COVID-19 process, procedures, and precautions, we've moved on somewhat from the initial phases of COVID-19 precautions from last year. Go to the next slide, please. And so what we're recommending to all our members is to review the COVID-19 procedures and operations manual. But some of the highlights there is that it's just basic stuff. If we're sick, we're not going to be the glide report. We're going to continue to socially distance as required, and we will wear masks when it's appropriate, and we'll follow the CDC guidance, CDC and state guidance. Okay, that's all we need for COVID-19 procedures. Next slide, please. HRS safety process. Next slide. So recommendations from the SSA, arrange a meeting for the entire operation so that we're taking care of that tonight. We're also going to virtual ground school class for students and all their pilots. That's being handled by our instructors, and that instruction is always there, and the instructors are available for private instruction too, as required. Review your operational documents for accuracy, validity, and accuracy, and that's the goal of the signing the Google form that we just went through. Some things that individual members should be doing is reviewing a logbook for flight review currency, and making sure, as well as if you take a passenger with you, if you're a rated pilot, that you have passenger currency. Tow pilots have their own Part 91 currency that we're interested in, and Ty will, our new chief tow pilot, will mention some other considerations for tow pilots. But this year, we would really like to have a consistent cadre of tow pilots, or tow pilots that are consistently flying. And so we're going to institute a few recommendations to make sure that those who really are interested in towing are doing it consistently, maintaining proficiencies so that all our club members are under a safe tow. Recommendation, FAA, the safety team or FAA safety.gov wins ground programs. Those are always a good thing. And then we have the back in the saddle, which is the last bullet. There is our back in the saddle checklist, which again, the review of the operations manual will take you through that process. So basically what we're recommending is Part 91 currency in the single place glider, or in the 126, or getting together with a CFIG and coming up with a tailored plan for your currency. Like a lot of people are going to also be current because we've been flying through the season. Okay, next slide.
Well, hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Everyone will get 2 hours of wings credit for this tonight.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Thank you, Mark. All right. Next slide. Okay, the HRS safety process. This has been 2 years in the making, and those cornerstones of the safety process are on the left. So we have quality instruction, and it's really encouraging to see our instructor cadre growing slowly over the last couple of years. We've got some new blood that's going to provide leadership while Mark takes the organization into his strategic direction. And there's lots of energy in both areas of the organization right now, which is really exciting. Annual safety meeting, which is tonight. So we're gonna discuss. We're going to get in the nitty gritty on a few things from the experts in our group. We've got the operations manual, which has been really a living document, and it's really exciting to see that grow along with the club. The currency plan, we've already been over that, and the safety report is for this year is going to be safety specific. So if an operation on a given day has no safety issues, then there's no report required. And this is kind of the way we default anyway. So we're just going to sort of codify that. A couple elements there for those of us in the group that are senior pilots or tow pilots or instructors. We're going to have to make sure we understand that when we're at the field, whatever role we're playing may or may not require us to generate safety, to be the author of a safety report or the originator of a safety report if we see a safety issue happen. So that's going to be either a CFIG, if there's a CFIG on the field. It's going to be the field manager otherwise, and if there's no field manager, it'll be the tow pilot. And so one of those three people will be intimately involved with the operations. And so if there's a safety issue, whether it's a powered pilot that's not being courteous to our operations, or it's something that's happening internal to the group, the important thing is for whoever's that senior person on the airfield is feeding this information back to the safety officer and or the safety committee so that we can adjudicate the issue and make sure that we take a look at our processes and procedures and change them if we need to. And then lastly, soaring community interaction. And again, I'm really excited to see Mark's leadership in the organization right now, because and there's a few other people as well that have really been reaching outside Hood River soaring to make sure we're staying aligned with the community in terms of safety and in terms of operations. On the right, I'd like to just recommend that everybody really review the resources that are listed there. So Hood River Soaring has a lot of information. Of course, the operations manual is required reading. So please read that before you sign your Google form. And of course, the Soaring Society of America and the Soaring Safety Foundation are also two great places to go and look at find information regarding safety. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, ground operations from here. Stan Voynick is one of our chief field managers, and he's going to take over. He's going to take over the discussion at this point and talk through our ground ops, how they're going to operate, and things we can do to maintain our appropriate safety posture. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. All right, Mark, next one. Okay, so I'm not going, like we've been doing so far, this is not a training session per se, but we're just kind of going over the high points and things that have changed from last year. And so some of this is repeating what Mark went over earlier, but the important points here, we've kind of restructured things. We used to just have sort of a qualification called the qualified field operating personnel. And we sort of made everybody, including our 14-year-old students and our adults, everybody could become a QFOP, and then QFOPs were sort of, it was hoped that they would become field manager, would take on the role of field managing. And we kind of split things up because we realized, all total due respect to our young students, that we didn't want to put the burden of field managing on our sort of new student aviators. So we've split things up as you see here. These terms have been talked about already. Chief Field Manager, that at the moment is myself, Ron Montag, and Brett Russell. Our job is to kind of oversee the thing. We're kind of sharing that load so it doesn't fall on any one person's shoulders. And the main thing there is to train everybody else in the club to be field managers so they can come out and oversee the operation on a given day. It's that field manager position, that next one there, which is the one where all of our adult aviator glider members are expected or are required now to sign up for 2 shifts per quarter. That's one of your obligations to the club now, is to contribute to the running of the field in this very specific way. These are and now this we kind of define this as adult aviators with a knowledge of airspace, traffic, radio communications, and aviation situational awareness. And this is why we don't want to put that burden on our young youth members who are just entering aviation and just learning about it. The field manager on any given day is the one who's overseeing the field operations. Part of that operation, part of that responsibility is to supervise the ground support personnel. You'll see in the next bullet down. All Aviator Club members must train as field managers, and the exception that Mark mentioned earlier is that those who are tow pilots only are not do not need to do this. They're already making their contribution to the club, and our reciprocal members from Willamette Valley are welcome to come and join our operations without needing to become field managers. Always welcome, of course, to help out with ground support and so on, but not required to be field managers. So yeah, that's that last bullet there. All Aviator Club members, all glider, I think I meant that to be all glider Aviator Club members must train as field managers and sign up for 2 shifts per quarter. That's consistent with what we were talking about earlier. Ground support then is the, kind of the boots on the ground. These people must be club members, and that's an important point, because in order for our insurance to cover any losses, which can happen in ground handling as well, The personnel involved must be club members and must be SSA members. So that's a requirement of our insurance policy. But these people can be youth members, they can be pre-solo students, they can be associate members as long as they are members of the club and SSA members. And we encourage everybody to do that. We require our youth to do that. I believe, Mark Stanfield, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we have, I don't know if it's been stated yet, but as a youth member takes signs up for an instruction block, which are those 2 or 2.5 hour blocks, four of them a day. As they sign up for one of those, I believe we are requiring them to then also sign up for one other instruction block time of ground support as well on that same day. It's what we used to do informally when, 3 years ago in the club, we said, hey, if you're going to come out and do some instruction, plan a couple hours before, plan a couple hours after, or help out with the ground support. That's now that we've got things, we're organizing a little more, putting things in instruction blocks. And so our students who take an instruction block should take either the block before or the block after in this ground support role, this last bullet here, to be managed and directed and so on by the field manager. The ground support people run the line. That's they help get gliders on and off the tie down area. They're out on bringing gliders out on the runway, assisting with a recovery to get them off the runway and so on. And this ground support role is the one that Mark mentioned, the ground badge earlier, and he went through that, but I think I've got that on the next slide, Mark, if you'll shuffle us forward to the next one. No, it'll come next. I'm kind of going in order here. So field manager training, any adult member. Okay, this first, forgive me, this first one, this is a little bit of a holdover from last time, but if you have already been in the club and you're an adult aviator that's been doing ground operations, you're pretty much presumed to be on the fast track into the field manager position, okay? These members are expected to complete the training and sign up for the 2 shifts per quarter. And here, the third bullet here is the other things we expect. And really, this is a good idea for every member of the club to do each year, is to do the SSA Soaring Safety Foundation Wing Runner course. We should all be familiar with that, but it's an important review to do every year just to make sure we're really on top of things. And then secondly, as we're just hitting these same points over and over again, review the HRS operations manual, especially the ground operations section for the purposes of this, but as our aviators would be expected to do look through the entire operations manual. And then finally, for field manager training, and this is sort of the last element here for those of you who are already pretty experienced at this, we're still going to do an in-person briefing and check out from one of the chief field managers, myself, Ron, or Brett, just to make sure we're kind of hitting all the high points of emphasis for this year. Make sure everybody's familiar with the operating environment, both on the ground and the airspace. Make sure everybody is comfortable and familiar with radio communication, air traffic awareness, ground traffic awareness, and something I'm hitting really, really strongly in my training with our members this year is just general situational awareness. That includes the traffic on the ground, the traffic in the air, listening to hear if you hear an engine for somebody who's maybe approaching and not on the radio yet, keeping the ear on the radio, keeping an awareness of what's going on. And that's really a useful thing for the field manager to contribute to the safety of this operation. And as we train our youth members, and there's a lot of that training that's going on here. I've already noticed, the field managers, as we're working with the youth members who are in the ground support roles, boy, we're watching what's going on, we're talking about what's happening, and we're just really helping add to their training, their aviation experience, and really getting them set up for success and safety in their aviation activities. So that in-person briefing will include, just making sure everybody understands that their role in awareness, situational awareness, and so on, the ground handling procedures specific to our operation and to our various ships, and of course the launch procedures that we are, I think, all pretty familiar with, but we just want to make sure that we're handling things in a consistent way. That includes cable hookup, wing running, hand signals, and so on. One of the things that I've sort of introduced now is that the ground person who's doing the cable hookup also makes a positive contact with the pilot about canopy launching. And as I teach our youth members, there are two big things that can go wrong, you know, right away in a launch. And one is the canopy not being latched, and the other is the spoilers being out. So those are two things that we, as ground operators, the pilot in command, of course, is always primary responsibility. We put a second set of eyes on it and just do a little bit of communication about that, just as a cross check, as happens so many other places in aviation. All right, next one, please, Mark. So from field manager training, we go to the next layer down to the ground badge training. That's what I wanted to, that was that next layer. And again, I won't belabor this point. Mark already went over, he kind of stole my thunder on the ground badge elements here, but we got them kind of laid out here. These are the ones you already heard Mark talking about. All adult HRS members should train to the field manager level. All of our adult HRS aviators should train to the field manager level. This page, what we're talking about is everybody else, our youth, our students, our associates, and everybody can start with this nicely laid out. And I will give a little credit, a little shout out and some great credit here to Kelly Webke, who really laid out this ground badge program on a nice kind of a brochure, a flow chart that leads our members through it. The ground badge completion of this program qualifies our members for the ground support level. And these elements are, like I say, and some of these, the asterisk and the double asterisk here are the ones that apply to our kind of existing adult aviators. But for a new member or especially a new youth member, not everybody's got government ID, so we make sure that they get that and bring it in, get some training on team up and the flight entry form and so on. Now these next two are the ones we've already talked about that all of our adult members should be doing: the Soaring Safety Foundation Wing Runner course. Make sure you read the operations manual, attend this safety meeting, and so on. And then the ground support time supervised by a field manager for the ground badge training, our young members, our associate members, and so on. We expect them to be out for 6, 8, 10 hours on several different days. So they get a chance to work with different people, work with different aircraft, work under different conditions on the field. In the case of our field manager members, that's where we have the in-person briefing with the chief field manager, field manager members for our already experienced aviators. We still want to do that in-person checkout. Going back to the ground badge program for our newer members, there's a ground lesson with a CFIG, Condor session, completing the IACRA, and then scheduling the introductory lesson. So that's kind of that's the big picture of what our youth members and our new students go through. But in the middle of those asterisks are the ones that we should all be doing and getting set up for. All right, Mark, next, please. Okay, and then this, like I say, I'm not going to go through how to hook up a glider and all the hand signals that we're going to use and so on. I'm just going to hit some of the high points and the emphasis, things we're emphasizing this year as a safety team. Actually, go back one, Mark. I think you went one forward there. Go back. Yeah. So I want to make the point, and we know this, I just want to hit it again. Can't say it enough. Ground personnel and the pilots in command together are a safety team. It's kind of like crew resource management. We all have contributions to make to the safety of the operation. The ground personnel, which includes combines the ground support people and the field manager who's overseeing the field, have certain responsibilities. They have go, no go authority for safety. And this should be clear to us as aviators. Anybody who sees a safety problem can call a halt. It's not just you have a responsibility to. If there's a safety problem going on, anybody who sees it can call a halt. The ground personnel specifically should understand should know what that hand signal is. And I think although I'm not going to go into a lot of detailed training tonight, I do have that one, I think, on a slide here. And I'm sort of re-emphasizing that one with during our training on the field this year. Maintain situational awareness, hook up, coordinate the tow plane wing running, contributing to the smooth flow of operations, and our ground personnel are all the public face of Hood River Soaring, and that's for people who come to see us, to intentionally come to visit us, people that happen to who happen to come by. Let's see, go right there, Mark. All right there, buddy. For the people who come to fly with us, and for our neighbors who come by, usually very friendly, happy ones, sometimes ones who want to talk about, you know, what we're doing and maybe aren't so happy with us, but we are the public face of Hood River Soaring, and so we will be good neighbors. Pilot and command responsibility also, of course, always has a go, no go authority for safety. And this is where that team comes in. Anybody who sees a problem can call a halt, and everybody needs to understand what their roles are in that. Pilot and command is responsible for all the typical aviation stuff: aircraft pre-flight, airworthiness, aircraft cleaning afterwards. One thing I don't have on here, but that is often included, is the personal checks, PAVE and I'm safe. You know, are you ready to go? Have you been through your personal checklist and understand your personal minimums and so on? And then finally, an important point I want to mention here, remind us all that ground handling of the aircraft, all the way back to the chocks, is the responsibility of the pilot command. Or if you do a positive acknowledged handoff to another PIC, and I want to see that be just as positive as you see commercial professional pilots doing a control handoff. You have the controls, I have the controls. If you are the PIC, you need to get that aircraft, that glider, back to the chocks and get it tied down, or else I'm giving you control of this glider. You got it? Yes, I got the glider. You know, that's positive control, and then that person is responsible for it from that point on. The launch signal is an implicit agreement when all of these conditions are met. The glider, pilot, and command is ready to go when they've given a thumbs up to lift the wing, and then the rudder wag is the launch signal. The next thing that has to happen is the ground support wing runner, who will usually also be doing a visual traffic check at that point, a final traffic check above at that point, will rotate and swing their arm. And then the tow pilot, I think most of our guys also give a rudder wag, but we know what's going to happen when we hear it power up. All those three things have to happen before a launch starts. All right, Mark, next one. And then here are just a couple of areas of emphasis for this season. The 50-foot line we talked about, and we are laying out some extra cones to further delineate that line. And what I'm talking about is the area within 50 feet off the runway pavement. This is considered active runway, okay? We have at times in the distant past been a little bit loose about, oh, moms and dads and brothers and sisters running out to see somebody on the pavement or out in the 50-foot area. We're going to be real strict about that this year, because that is it's an important enhancement to our safety to be aware of that area. Only necessary ground personnel should be in this area. No extra visitors, no family, all that stuff. Everybody else should be at least back behind the 50-foot line, and preferably, really, there's no reason for anybody to come out much beyond the tree line. You know, that's the safe place to be, is people back by the tree line or shrub line if they're going to be out in that area. We are going to standardize on personnel who are entering that active runway zone shall have high visibility shirts or vests. You see us, and we'll decide on colors. I don't know. I've always worn an orange, but that's, you know, it's up for negotiation. I believe we've acquired a number of the bright safety green vests, which we can pass out. I think people have, somebody's even put a nice HRS on the back of those. So my proposal for the moment, the colors may change. The bottom line is we need everybody who's on the runway or in that active area doing ground support to have on high visibility. That doesn't necessarily include the pilots. And as a matter of fact, as I think Mark discovered, if you wear one of the bright green vests in certain of the aircraft, you get a bad reflection off the inside of the canopy. So, but all ground personnel and field managers who are going to be doing that should be dressed in high vis. And again, another bullet is, again, focus on situational awareness. All ground support and field managers should maintain alertness, foster situational awareness. There are all these elements of ground traffic, air traffic, you know, keeping awareness on the radio, communicating enough on the radio. You need to, you know, the lesson for radio communications is say everything that needs to be said and no more. So you don't want to overdo it, and you don't want to be keying down on the radio for 20, 30, 40 seconds at a time. You want to say what you need to say, and then leave the air open for other people to communicate. Think ahead and try to get there ahead of time. And I'm working on our students with this one now. If you're sitting back at the glider tie down area and you see a glider come and land, and you say, oh, time to go run the 1,000 feet down to get them recovered. That's, you could be showing better situational awareness by being aware that they're entering over the high school, they're on the downwind. Let's get down there now. Let's kind of get halfway down there, guess where they're going to be, and kind of try to be there when they get there. That just makes things efficient. It makes us, it makes our operation flow more smoothly, makes us better neighbors to the other aviators on the field. Another one is, again, on situational awareness is, and we haven't hit this one real hard in the past, but let's not ever get to the point where we need to review it. Tow plane and propeller awareness. That propeller is a risk factor. And so I've been, again, in my training of ground personnel, what I'm trying to get people to do is, as if the tow plane is moving and we are anywhere in the zone, we stay stationary so that we're not adding distraction and task loading to the tow pilot. If the tow pilot has 3 different people running around, we are adding to the tow pilot's task loading in operating the tow pilot safely, the tow plane safely. What typically you'll see me do when I'm out near the glider waiting for the tow plane to pull up is we stay stationary, sort of in the front area between the fuselage and the wing there, and we stand still until the tow pilot has come towards us, turned around and stopped. And what that does is that lets the tow pilot know that we're not going to be running around, we're not going to be making any sudden movements, and it just helps them to keep their situational awareness and to reduce their task loading so that they can handle everything they need to in the tow plane. So propeller awareness and tow plane awareness I'm working on our personnel this year. And then finally, a quick one just on the use of equipment on the field. The golf cart, I know that our youth members like to get driver training, but the golf cart should be positioned where it needs to be efficiently so that it's available to go and do that previous bullet, get there ahead of time so it's ready to go. So that's what the golf cart should be used for, is just for necessary operations, or if somebody needs to run back to the trailer and get fuel, get the gas can or something like that. And then the other piece of equipment that's an important one is cell phones. And I will say this happens as much with adults as it does with the youth. Is we shouldn't be out there. If we're out there, let's keep our heads in the game. Let's keep our situational awareness up. If somebody's taking a picture, I'm sure Ty would love it if we would take some good pictures that we can put on the HRS webpage when our task loading is low and when we have time. But we shouldn't be hanging on there, on social media, posting selfies and all that stuff. Only cell phone use should be limited to stuff that needs to further the club operation. And I will say, yes, of course, for our youth members, this includes coordinating parent pickups and so on. We're not going to take cell phones away, but I need your head in the game when you're out there. You're an important part of the safety of this operation, and I need everybody with their eyes out and their brains aware of what's going on. All right, Mark, what's next? I can't even remember what I had next. A quick one on tow ropes, and we've talked a lot about tow ropes in past years, and I think we're in a pretty good groove here. I'm not going to go through a lot of this. I think this is a previous chart that sort of had a lot of detail. We'll go through these things in training as far as the actual hookup. Important to know, there's a Schweitzer ring and there's a toast ring, and we'll do this training, and it's important because if you stick a toast ring on a Schweitzer hook, it can get jammed, and that's a bad situation. So this is one of the verbal interactions that we do between the ground personnel and the pilot. Big ring, response is big ring. Small ring, the toast one, small ring, and we make sure that we've got the right one there. Weak links, the pilot and command, although we, as a courtesy, usually the ground personnel will run around and try to make sure we've got a weak link in the golf cart. The pilot in command is responsible for providing the weak link. So make sure that's one of your pre-flight things, is make sure the weak link is around. It may be the one that's in the golf cart, and that's absolutely fine, but just the pilot in command is the primary source of the weak link, and we'll back you up. The ground crew will back you up if we can. I think that's everything on the tow ropes. I don't think there's a lot to dwell on there. And weak link, again, that we were going through a lot of tow rope self-searching a year or two ago, and so we had several slides on tow ropes, but this is basically talking about how we construct the weak link. These are all standard, the tow rope or weak link strength needing to be 80 to 200% of the gross weight of the glider being launched. These are things that we will go over out on the field during field training. Next, Mark. Finally, and I'm not going to go through all of the, we will go through these, and you should be seeing these in the Soaring Safety Foundation Wing Runner course. I do want to show, though, the lower left, stop operation immediately. If something is going on, just it's waving your hands, it's getting attention. And then the stop one, which is the very center, the hold one, the very center one there, which is with the arms, I'm to move back here, arms straight out like this. And actually, if you were out on the field a couple of operations just this Sunday, we were using that, because what we had was, we were staged on the pavement, and we had a glider, one of our gliders, who was fully aware of us and had been making good calls on the radio. I think I'm going to give credit to Jonathan on that one, because when he was calling from over the high school and entering on the 45, he was already aware that we were staging on the pavement. We didn't even have to tell him. He was situationally aware. So when he was making his 45-degree call over the high school entering the downwind, he was already calling for the grass, because he was aware of what was going on. And that was really good forward thinking, really good situational awareness. So at that point, when I knew we weren't going to be able to get out, it was either myself or one of the ground personnel. Everything was hooked up. We were kind of ready to go, and we put the wing back down on the ground, and we gave the hold signal to the tow pilot. And the whole idea is, remember that the tow pilot is looking at you through a vibrating 3-inch mirror, and so we've got to be big with our operations, you know, so with our hand signals. So so that's one we used this year, or just this Sunday, and I'm gonna train on that one, and things went really well and really safely this year. So these hand signals, you should review them, pick them up from the Soaring Safety Foundation course. We'll go over them on the field, but I just wanted to introduce that the stop immediately and the hold signals, that we're going to kind of re-emphasize that this year, and those will help add to our safety. I think that may be the end of me, Mark. Yep, there we go.
Thanks. Hey, thanks, Dan. Hey, Mark, let me take the screen again. Mind if I do that? All right, I got some updated slides here. Can everyone see that?
Right now I think we're still getting the aerotow procedures, and then what are you trying to display, Mike?
Yeah, aerotow procedures.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, you got a movie going?
No, it should just be the main screen.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Ty, you're up.
Yep. Cool. I'll turn my video on here so you can see me. Cool. So yeah, for those that don't know me, I'm Ty Sidley. I took over for Seth as the chief tow pilot this year. I think this is my 3rd year of towing. I'm not a glider pilot, just a tow pilot, but someday I'll get there. So
Not yet.
Right. All right, next slide. All right, so see if I can make yours bigger here, Mike. Mike, we're seeing like your
Okay, yeah, hold on. Sorry, everybody. Try this again. I know. Oh. Is it still that? It's still the
yeah, it's just small. I can't read the.
How do I get it out of this thing? Show taskbar.
Is there like a presentation mode button or something there, Mike?
Yeah. All right, let me hold on, let me oh, there it is. Stand by. There you go. Okay, how's that?
Now we're talking. Good.
Okay, sorry about that. Takes time.
Yep. All right. So as a as Stan was saying, when we're looking backwards on the through the mirrors on the tow plane, we can't see a whole lot. The mirrors are pretty small, but so the more pronounced you can make your signals, it makes it easier on the tow pilots for sure. The take up slack, if you have your hat, if you can hold your hat, that definitely helps sometimes too. As you rock your arms back and forth. And us tow pilots really need to make sure that we stay studied up on these signals, because we've gone months and months and I never saw anybody give the hold sign. So just to know what they're talking about. We're pretty good with radio communication, but if it's busy at the airport, we don't want to be clogging up 122.8 with just chatter. So you can certainly read over those, make sure you're aware of them. And same goes for in flight too. As we get kind of on these really nice weekends that we've had, we get a lot of airplanes coming in, and we may not get time on the radio for the glider to tell the tow pilot, hey, I need 20 degrees left, or 5 more knots, or I'll get off here. So there's some signals that you can do when you're on tow, especially your steering turns. And it's good stuff just to practice too. It's good for you, it's good for me. So especially as we start flying these flights, these get back in the saddle flights, box the wake, do some steering turns, everything like that. And then, of course, also as a glider pilot, be aware of, the signals that I could be sending to you. If I'm rocking my wings, that means get off tow immediately. We have been having some minor issues with the tow plane, enough just to kind of keep us on guard a little bit. So certainly be mindful if we start rocking our wings that the best thing you can do is get off tow. Next slide. Cool. Probably, some of the most dangerous things we do, especially with the inexperienced ground crew. We have a lot of youth around here, are these the staging and takeoff operations. Just like Stan said, we got a big propeller spinning out there at 1,000 RPM that could do a lot of damage. So there's no reason for anybody to be forward of the wing. But make sure you're communicating that if for some reason you have to. I think we have a pretty good system worked out. The tow pilots especially try to be mindful of when you're staging, that you're not blasting the glider that's waiting to get hooked up. There's, for multiple reasons, a lot of times they have their canopy open. We had some guests today that did a scenic flight in the 232. And Tim did a great job of telling them before we even took the airplane out to the runway that, really keep an eye on this canopy, hold it open. Because especially when you have two people in the back of the 232, that canopy gets slammed shut, it could be right off of somebody's skull. So be mindful of that. And then also we don't want to be, blasting somebody's windscreen with sand and stuff coming up off the runway. So just be mindful of that. And yeah, next slide. I think we get into it a little bit more here. Sure. So kind of got our 3 really critical areas here, starting with number 1 down on the bottom right. We have a lot of gliders out there now, which is great. But again, be mindful, especially it's getting windy, these windy summer days, how you have your glider sitting, if it's not tied down, which wing is down. And then again, us tow pilots, most of the time we've been parking over in front of Russ Reed's house. Yep. And that kind of keeps us away from everything. We don't have to worry about blasting everybody with our prop wash, and it keeps it away from other people. It's area number 1 there tends to get pretty crowded, especially on busy weekends. A lot of people walking around. If we have some scenics going on, they might have some guests with them that aren't flying, and they're kind of standing around. And the field manager does a good job of making sure those people are kind of looked after. Then as we bring the airplane out, we have that 50-foot line. Let's make sure that, we're communicating on 122.8. We're checking for traffic all the time. And really, I think something that I really want to stress is making sure that we're courteous to other aircraft in the pattern. If you got somebody that's, 2 miles north of the field, they're going to overfly, enter a left downwind for 2.5. Probably not a good time to roll out the 232 or the ASK and, and sit there for a few minutes. If you're ready to go and it's, that you're not going to take a long time on the runway, you just can hook up and go. That's one thing. But if it's a instructional flight, let's not sit out there too long. Just be mindful of other aircraft kind of coming and going. And there is certain rules for dual runway operations, and they're supposed to be coordinated ahead of time. Now, whether that coordination is a simple radio call or not, or face-to-face talking ahead of time, that's kind of to be determined. We had somebody in the pattern today, and we were staged up on 2.5, and we said, hey, do you want to wait for us to take off, or you can take off in the grass if you'd like. We're going to be a few minutes. And they chose to take off in the grass. So just be mindful of the dangers involved there. We've tried to implement some rules in the past about the dual runway ops, and it's just not always practical to kind of isolate the people there. Once you're out on the runway, again, just expedite everything as much as you can, as safely as you can. The tow pilots, I've kind of seen everybody, you don't have to get too close to the glider to get staged up. And I'm probably as guilty as anybody. I probably get closer than most. I was watching Ranger Rick tow when we had the Horizon Christian School out there the other day. And he was quite a ways away when he turned around, and you have 200 feet of rope. There's nothing saying that you have to pull right up in front of the glider and stop. Especially you got some of these young kids, they can run back and forth. But once you're staged up, we're keeping an eye in our mirror. And if you haven't communicated ahead of time to the tow pilot where you want to go, a good time to do that is to have the ground crew communicate that to the tow pilot. Stan was doing a great job last Saturday when I was towing. He has some hand signals that he uses, a P for pattern tow, or he'll point to the ridge and say 3,000 feet. So that's, pretty easy communications. And a lot of times, if it's a student, we know that they're doing 4 patterns, or they're going to the ridge, or they're doing a high tow. Just make sure you communicate that somehow, so we're not kind of sitting there on our takeoff roll wondering where we're going next. And then spot number 3 there on the takeoff roll. Even we've been flying a lot of really flat, calm days the last couple weeks, even a little bit of tailwind. And it doesn't take more than a couple steps for the wing runner to take, and then there's enough airflow over the wings to have enough control authority to keep wings level. So you don't have to chase the airplane too long, just get it moving, and then make sure you get back off that 50-foot line so we're all safe. On climb out, us tow pilots are doing everything we can to maintain center line. I was talking to Steve Frisbee a while back, and he made a good point. Whether the glider's there or not, I'm going flying, and my oil pressure is good, my temps are good. I'm so focused on taking off that the glider is almost the least of my concern. I'm making a smooth takeoff. I'm pitching for the appropriate airspeed. I'm going to hold that attitude. And once I'm safely airborne and I've again scanned my instruments, I might look back in the mirror to make sure you're there. If I can feel it getting a little wild, I might glance back and see what's going on. But really, my focus is control of my airplane and not so much the glider behind me. So that's why it's really important. We've read these accident studies about the gliders that are kiting, or they have a canopy come open and they lose control. I think that's why it's so dangerous for the tow pilots, because they're so focused on flying their own airplane that they're not very mindful of the glider behind them. So we really rely on you guys to if something gets too out of hand, abort the takeoff for sure. Likewise, we had a small hiccup with the engine last weekend, and luckily it was on a takeoff roll when I wasn't towing a glider. It was on a warm-up lap. But I've thought a lot about if I did have a glider at tow, my main goal is to, it happened far enough down the runway that we were going flying. So my main goal is to get you to 150 or 200 feet so you can make that 180 back to the runway. Once we do that, we may not even have enough, if it's a partial power loss, we may not even have enough control authority if we're kind of on the ragged edge of stall there to really rock our wings. So we'll probably give you a radio call or something like that, but you'll probably know if we're having problems. Next slide. So in flight, this is when we, after we, 99% of our operations are all on runway 25. We take off on 25. If I'm towing the 232 like I was today, I'm pitching for 70 miles an hour, and I get over the end of the runway, and I kind of start my right-hand turn to the right downwind. And if it's really windy, that turn can kind of be a lot of work. But once we're established on the downwind, I'm really focused on that climb again. And it doesn't take long to get above a lot of that mechanical turbulence, and it smooths out pretty good. But once we get out of the pattern, pretty much every tow that we do is going to head to the downwind base corner of the right downwind for 2.5. And then from there, we'll depart from there. I think that's on the next slide. Come up here, right? Yeah, here we go. Yep, so we take off, doing a right turn. If it's a pattern tow, I'm just gonna come off on a 45 and kind of head towards Barrett Park, where about you'll get off at 15 or 1600 feet over the high school. You'll fly your right downwind, I'll fly my left downwind, and we'll meet back on the ground. But every other tow, whether it's going to Underwood or it's going to the Dog Bowl or it's going to the Ridge, everything else kind of goes to that right downwind base corner that you see right there. And from there, we'll either depart north towards the bridge, or we'll start heading south along Highway 35 for the Ridge. And a lot of times, I was looking at today, we're well above pattern altitude by that time. Most of the time. I mean, I had a pretty heavy 232 today, and we were above 2,000 feet by the time we passed there. So we are trying to be mindful of the noise abatement zone that you see there. We are looking to, I think it's on order now, a new 4-blade propeller for the Pawnee. It's important enough that the port is funding a majority of that new propeller. So that should cut down on the noise quite a bit. I'm looking forward to flying it. I'm sure it's going to be a little bit different flying. We'll see how that goes. But from that point, we'll depart north or south and to our regular areas of operation. Next. So accidents. I kind of spoke of one earlier there. Mark has sent these out, a great read about some accidents a couple weeks back. I think we get into it here. Next slide. Here it is. So Byron Airport in California, the glider pilot reported a canopy problem which distracted him, resulting in a 100-foot climb above the tow plane, or kiting. The glider released, but it was too late and the tow plane lost control. 1 second. So that's really the most dangerous part for us tow pilots. You're we may only be 100 feet, 200 feet off the ground. So if we have a kiting issue, I always talk about my left hand is kind of preloaded from the full throttle on takeoff. It's kind of preloaded that if any anomaly happens, my next course of action is to immediately 6 inches forward. I'm going for the guillotine. Can you turn on that light? Thanks. So the next one, we had a glider loss of control resulting in pitch up and kiting on takeoff. The glider released, but the tow plane lost control and crashed. Glider CG hooked, and it is possible the CG was too far aft, leading to the upset. Mark had an issue the other day when I was towing him. He had a trim issue, and he wasted no time. We were on climb out, and he recognized the problem. And as soon as we were high enough, he got off tow and flew right downwind for an uneventful landing. You see a lot of these accidents are all glider induced, with the exception of the last one there. But they're all, the glider lost control or the pilot was distracted. So, we put a lot of faith in you guys and girls that are flying the gliders. Take as much time as you need to make sure that everything is set. Your canopy is latched, your control surfaces are free and correct, everything like that, because it's our butts on the line just as much as yours. And then, of course, glider tow with too little fuel led to fuel starvation, and the tow plane crashed into the orchard. Luckily, our pilot lived and wasn't too banged up, but we have strict rules: no more than 10 glider tows on one tank of fuel. And typically when we go to top off, we have more fuel in there than we expect, but there's really no need to sit in the tow plane for more than 10 glider tows at a time, because you certainly need a break to get out, and it's a good time to get gas. Next step.
Okay, this is Steve. Steve, let me, I'm gonna pull up your let's see this one. Steve, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I think this is
Yep.
good. Does this look like the ones you sent me?
Yeah, it'll work.
Okay.
I can work with it. I'm flexible.
Awesome, thank you.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Michael. And thanks, Ty. I appreciate your input there on the tow pilot's end of that. So I started with Hood River as a tow pilot. I had glider experience, and but I really went up there to be able to fly the Pawnee, and then just fell in love with gliders all over again. And so I'm happy to be take the position as the chief flight instructor. I've got the least experience of any of the flight instructors, so I've got a lot of brain power there that I'm going to rely on and try to bring it all together. But one thing that I do know is that as a pilot and an aviator, that first and foremost, I am a student, and secondarily an instructor. So I think everybody needs to have that mindset. You're open to listening to people with more experience or different experience than you have, and learning from them. Email address, if anybody needs to contact me, has any questions, any issues, needs some help, that address down there, whammo66@gmail.com is my preferred address. I have another one that's at Hotmail, but it's a lot more difficult to manage. So please use that email address. The first slide here, aviate, navigate, communicate. And aviate comes first, and really everything else comes last. You have got to fly that glider. It can't fly itself. You're the brains behind the stick, and if you ever give up that role as the aviator and to take on another role of navigation or communication and stop flying the glider, it's going to be a bad day. It's not going to work out well. And that kind of goes back to Ty's presentation about the canopies opening up. These are situations where the pilot of the glider was distracted, gave up flying the glider to try to close the canopy. And every one of these gliders will fly with the canopy open or the canopy off. It will not fly without a pilot. So it's your duty to remain focused on flying the glider. This section is regarding the launch, release, and recovery of the gliders. Next slide. Okay, so risk mitigation and safety. That's really what this presentation is all about. And we use checklists in flying, lots of checklists, and that starts on the ground or on your way to the airport. PAVE is the checklist reminder that we use. First up, pilot. You need to pre-flight yourself. Make sure that you are fit to fly and that you have all the legal requirements met. The I'm safe checklist is the checklist that we want to use for making sure that you're ready to be acting as pilot command and making the appropriate decisions. Just quick review, I'm safe is illness. And if you're feeling sick, that needs to be taken into consideration. You may have the sniffles. You might be able to go flying with mitigation of some medication. That's the M, but we need to consider the medication. Oftentimes we think of prescription medication as being an issue, but a lot of times over-the-counter medication can also have numbing effects. You see on the warning, don't use when you're operating heavy equipment. Well, I'm going to say don't use it when you're operating light equipment either. These gliders don't weigh very much, but the implications can be mighty. So medication, the FAA has a list of medications, safe and maybe alternatives that don't cause drowsiness. Need to review that, make sure that that falls into place on the safe side. S, stress. Flying in general is stressful. It's one of the things that makes it kind of fun. You're out there, you're challenged, you're working, really maybe learning. There's stress involved. But if you have other areas of your life that have a lot of stress, managing, just getting by, and then you add on that stress of flying, it can be overwhelming and you wouldn't be a safe pilot. It's better to keep your feet on the ground in those situations. Alcohol. We know about the effects of alcohol, and you shouldn't drive, but you shouldn't fly either. And you could be sober on the ground, and with the effects of altitude, the alcohol can become have that effect at altitude that you may be sober on the ground and not in the air. So alcohol, we want to make sure we're not using alcohol and within the time period that might have an effect on you. F stands for fatigue. If you've had a long work day, a long day flying, maybe that last flight that you want to make a good choice on whether you've had enough rest, if you're overwhelmed, and it's always better to be on the ground wishing you were in the air than in the air wishing you were on the ground. The last E is emotion, and that's how your personal life might be affecting you. And that comes into place. So these are the things you need to consider. Make sure you're in a good place as a pilot to go flying. And then legal requirements, of course, you got to have your FAA certificate and your photo ID with you to fly a glider. Next on the PAVE checklist, the aircraft, you're going to make sure that it's legal to fly in. The checklist we use there is airworthiness, the registration for the aircraft, operating limitations, that would be the flight manual, and any placards that are required. And W stands for our weight and balance data. So you have the information you need to make sure that the aircraft is within its limitations for weight and balance. A thorough pre-flight, and there you go to your operating limitations or your flight manual and do a thorough pre-flight. Make sure the aircraft is sound and ready for flight. It's also your responsibility as pilot command to make sure that the aircraft has been annualed and reviewing the logbooks. Make sure all of the maintenance has been performed and the aircraft is airworthy. Next on our PAVE checklist is the V for environment. That's your weather. Any temporary flight restrictions, NOTAMs, any situations with the airport or the airspace around you, and weather, of course. Also personal minimums, and personal minimums, I just would encourage everyone to write down your personal minimums, put them down with ink, and you can revise these, but if you don't write them down, it's very tempting that if you you just fudge. So this is a little beyond my personal minimums, and that can be a snowball effect, and you can get yourself in a situation that you don't want to find yourself. As your experience improves, you get more better at flying in crosswinds or in challenging conditions, then you can revise those personal minimums. So please write them down and stick to those. The last on the PAVE checklist is external pressures. Why are you doing this? Flying gliders is something we do for fun. It's not something that we have to do, something we're doing for enjoyment. And so really think about that. If you feel like you're pressured to make a flight for some reason, you promised someone you take them flying, but things aren't working, it's a good idea never to try to force that round peg into a square hole. You need to, if things aren't working, you're feeling pressured, that's a really good time to step back, take a breath, and say, why am I doing this? And is this safe? Next slide. All right, so checklists. If you're flying your own glider, I suggest you have a appropriate checklist for that glider. And if you need help, please get with a CFI G to formulate a checklist. The one that we use typically is lined out here. We're going to touch on a few of the items. Altimeter set, of course, that's the first thing we do, setting it for field elevation. Next up, ballast. Do you need ballast? What's the situation? Is there ballast? At K-21, we have some youth members that are very light, and we need all the ballast plates and then additional ballast behind the seat. Make sure there's not any ballast in there you're not aware of. That's your responsibility as a pilot. So ballast, we want to make sure that that is set, and that, of course, you're checking your weight and balance. That's all in proper place. Seat belts. Oh, and other thing about ballast and your seat belts and these items, these are things that you need to think about checking. You shouldn't be doing this out on the runway. Like Ty said, we don't want to tie up the tow plane, have them sitting there idling while we're trying to figure out, oh, the belts don't fit. All of these items should be done in advance in the staging area to make sure that that you have these covered. We will go over them again, of course, right before takeoff, but it doesn't hurt to do them twice and to make sure that the aircraft is that you're all set to go when we move out there. Controls, moving the controls through the four corners of the stick, checking your rudders, rudder pedals, make sure that you have full free movement and that your rudder pedals are adjusted the correct length. Obviously, you look, sometimes you can't see the if you're strapped in the glider, you can't see those ailerons very well. That's an excellent time to do that on your pre-flight when you're standing there, to move that stick around and check that the controls are free and correct when you can actually get eyes on them. And if it's just been assembled, it'd be a good idea to do a positive control check. Out on the runway, you're going to take a look at that cable, the hook, or the rings, make sure they look good and that the knot looks good. And if it looks bad, stop. We're going to cut it, and we'll retie it at that point. We want to try to stretch it out, and when it's not in good condition. Dive brakes. This could be a really bad day for a glider pilot if he doesn't have his dive brakes closed and locked. When you check those, operate them, actuate them, take them out to their full extent, verify they're operating symmetrically, and then lock them in place. Next up on our list is direction of the wind. So you can look at the windsock, but anybody who flies at Hood River very much knows the windsock there on the north side of the field is wildly inaccurate. So take a look at your yaw string. The really important part to remember here is, what is this wind going to, how is it going to affect your emergency plan? Is it coming from the right? Is it coming from the left? Is it, how strong is it? And that you're applying to the emergency plan, which is the next line item. And this is the situation where you really want to speak this out loud. You're cocking the gun for the eventuality that you might have to pull the trigger at 200 feet, and you're going to know what you have to do. If you have to think about that emergency plan when the rope breaks, or when the tow plane cuts you loose or rocks his wings, that's the wrong time to be formulating a plan. You need to have this plan in place, ready to go, so you know what you're going to do. And of course, below 200 feet, we're going to go straighter to the right, avoiding the tow plane, and finding a place with, we're not going to run into anything. If you're above 200 feet, then we're going to turn into the wind and then affect our downwind landing. Much higher than that, then we're going to make an abbreviated pattern. And these are things that you need to be thinking about and considering, and you put that in the forefront of your brain before takeoff. Canopy closed and locked. And we've got, like Stan mentioned, we've got the ground person who's going to help you remember this. But that is really important. The two things that I want, if you get, we'll flip to the next slide here. No, I guess we missed my slides. The one thing I was going to mention is that if you are interrupted on this checklist at any point, 2 items we want to go back and verify before you kick the rudder and tell them you're ready to go. Canopy closed and locked, dive brakes closed and locked. Those are the 2 items that could make a really, really bad day. Yeah, my slides are a little goofy here, but the other thing I wanted to mention is on that takeoff is look around, check for traffic, but your focus from the time you move those rudder pedals has got to be forward on the runway on that tow plane. Glance away to check traffic, fine, but 99% of your focus has got to be on that tow plane and maintaining position in relationship to that tow plane all the way up to release. Once we get up on tow and we're getting ready to release, we're going to look right to check and make sure there's no traffic. We would be interfering with us when we release and turn right, but we're also going to look to the left and make sure the tow plane can turn left and he doesn't have any traffic or terrain that might be a problem for him. We're going to say out loud, I'm clear and he's clear. We have 2 different release techniques dependent on the glider that you're flying. The Schweitzer gliders with the Schweitzer ring, we will do a soft release. Of course, you'll go over that with your instructor. And on the toast hooks on all the other gliders, we're going to do a hard release. And as soon as you've got that hook away, you're going to turn right. Not going to waste any time. That's a situation where that ring could get fouled and hit the canopy of the glider, potentially get snagged in a control surface, worst case scenario. We want to get away from that. So that hook's away, you're going to turn right. No waste of any time in that release. And the last little item here is the first 3 flights of the season. We want you to go up to 3,000 feet or better, do some stalls, do some slow flight, get a feel for the controls again, steep turns, and then do some patterns as well. And this is going to fulfill the requirements for insurance and club requirements and FAA requirements. But if you haven't been flying all winter, I really want you to consider this gets you current, but does it make you a competent pilot? I think all of us need to strive to make sure that we're competent, and it's going to take significantly more than 3 flights to do that. Commit yourself to honing your skills as a pilot, hold yourself to a high standard, and you're going to be a safer pilot that way. Next slide. Situational awareness. Well, this is a point that Stan touched on, and we really want to drive home for all the pilots here is really being hyper vigilant in your situational awareness. Where is the airport? At any time, you need to know which direction that airport or where your intended landing point is. If you're going on a cross country, identified potential landing sites and where they're at, and are you within gliding distance of that safe point that you can land. Next is situational awareness of the tow plane. You get off tow, we turn right, he turns left. As soon as we're clear, we need to be looking for him to see where he's at, because that's going to be our closest traffic in most cases, and positively identify where he's at. And if you can't see him, maybe make a radio call. Hey, where you at? And always, especially when there's other gliders in the air, making position reports. Other traffic. The point I want to drive home here is that the time to start thinking about where that traffic isn't after you get off tow. It really needs to start while you're on the ground, while you're in the staging area, while you can figure out how many gliders are up, who's out, where they're at. That's going to give you some clues as to where the lift may be. But also you're developing a mental picture of what the environment looks like, and where you could expect those gliders to be once you get up in the air. And then terrain awareness, of course, where you're throttling, considering how the wind can cause you to drift, possibly back over the top of the ridge, or if you're down low into terrain, keeping terrain in sight and in mind, maintaining that situational awareness as it relates to terrain as well. Next slide. Pattern tows kind of goes back to what we were talking about previously. At release, the tow pilot's going to turn left immediately. You're going to turn right immediately. We want to make sure that tow rope doesn't hit the glider or potentially foul the glider in some way. Next slide. Okay, so recovery. This is what I like to call a landing. Here is another situation where you really want to be totally aware of what the wind's doing and how that's going to affect your traffic pattern, potentially your aiming point, your touchdown point, and your stopping point. Here on the blue line, we see that we've had probably a relatively calm day. We don't have to worry about the wind so much, and you're going to make more of a wide pattern there, probably have a nice long stabilized approach. But if the wind is blowing significantly, that is all going to change, and you're making that judgment when you're beaming the numbers, always referencing back to your aiming point. That aiming point should be about 150 to 200 feet prior to where your intended touchdown point is, which would be 2, and then the stopping point, of course, wherever you can get the glider stop, or if you're looking for a targeted precision landing. As you develop a feel for the glider that you're flying, you'll be able to figure out where these points are. But those are things that you can adjust, and you will have to adjust based on the wind conditions. Next slide. Our pre-landing checklist. FG watts is how I think it's supposed to go, but it doesn't matter. And this checklist is primarily in the eventuality that you're going to fly a more complex glider. So we've included some items that you need to think and need to have in the forefront of your mind, your brain, before you get to the IP that you're going through. And I would encourage all my students and anybody who's getting refreshed to do this on the ground. Think about these items and start to build that into your memory. Brakes. We're talking about wheel brakes. Different gliders have brakes in different locations. A lot of times they're on the spoiler lever. You pull the spoilers or the air brakes all the way back out, and then you'll have your wheel brake actuation. But sometimes they're not. Sometimes you have a squeeze handle on the stick, and the time to try to figure out where the brakes are on the glider you're flying today is not when you're on the ground trying to get them applied. You want to have that, and this is a refresher. You've identified where they're at. Next up, landing gear. If you have a retractable gear, you want to make sure that goes down. So we always talk about the gear, whether you're in a fixed gear glider or not. Flaps. You may have a glider that requires landing flaps. You want to get those flaps set for landing. Then we get down to the watts. This applies to everything you're going to fly. The wind. We talked about that previously. Awareness of the wind velocity and direction, how that's going to affect your pattern, how it's going to affect your selection of runway. If the wind has changed significantly, it might be wise to be landing on 7. Next up is airspeed, choosing the appropriate airspeed for landing based on the glider you're flying. And the first T is for trim. You're trimming for that airspeed, so that the glider is going to fly that airspeed without you really putting a lot of control force in it. So you're trimming it for the airspeed that you've selected for your landing. Next up, the second T for traffic. You're looking out for traffic, checking the runway to see what the traffic is on the runway, staging in the pattern, listening on the radio, also announcing your position in the traffic pattern. And if you hear somebody call, that's a good time for you to call out and let them know where you're out as well. And the next up is spoilers. The spoilers come out, you unlock the spoilers, cycle them, and then they remain unlocked. Those spoilers are not. Now your hands on the spoiler for the rest of the approach and landing. And the second part of that is spot to land. So you're adjusting your spoilers, looking at your landing spot, and flying your approach to land. That's your pre-landing checklist. And next slide. This kind of goes back to the proficiency and competency. In the pattern, we're always asking ourselves, are we high, are we low, are we fast, are we slow? We're going to be making those adjustments, never focusing on the airspeed indicator, but always referencing it occasionally, then going back to fly to change your pitch attitude as is necessary to yield the speed that we want to fly. And you got to keep those eyes out to see if you're high or low for adjusting your spoilers to get to the appropriate glide path that you need to see. And fighting for the center line, fighting for that spot, trying to be as accurate as possible, trying to fly that whole approach, making adjustments to your base and your final turn, flying with half spoilers. That's the goal. We're trying to get you tuned in to be a really precise pilot, not so much for runway 25 at Hood River, but if you start going out and you're flying competitions or cross countries, you might have to put this down in a field. There might be a fence, there may be trees. These are situations you need to be a very competent, precise pilot, be able to make the marks, hit those goals. And we really want everyone here to be very competent pilots and not just meeting the legal requirements necessary. How many landing strips? This is something we've really started to branch out, trying to get people in the habit of making decisions and seeing that grass runway. We get so myopic, I think, looking at that 25 paved runway, and that's our runway. Let's just step over and land on the grass. If it's it might help out with our fellow aviators at Hood River. You've got a plane waiting there to launch, and if we land on the pavement, that's going to take time for us to clear so they can go. Hey, we can land on the grass and really be a good neighbor and allow that other traffic to get out. And I know Stan appreciates that as well. It really kind of helps the flow sometimes. So if we're all working together as a team, we can make this really work well. So, but how many landing strips? So we have 2-5, obviously the paved strip, we've got the grass strip, but in a pinch, if you've got gliders all over the field, you could land on that taxiway and you could land on the grass to the right of the taxiway as well. So we really have 4 landing strips. We wouldn't want to land on the one to the left where we do all the staging. A lot of times we have ground support vehicles, pedestrians, whatever. We wouldn't want to, that would be a really way down the list on runway options, but we have 4 good options there should we need them. And next slide. Okay, so I want to go back to what Stan said. Once you if you get done with the glider, make sure you're handing it off, either taking it back to the tie down spot and securing it, putting it away, or making a positive handoff, just like we do the positive handoff when we're in the air, that who's flying the glider, and we have a formal exchange of controls. We're gonna do the same thing with the glider, making sure that the person who's taking over realizes they are now responsible for that. And that's gotta be something that they agree to, as well as you handing it over to them. If there's any maintenance issues, make sure we notify maintenance. Make sure that if it's a matter of airworthiness, that needs to go be tagged out. You need to make sure that everyone is aware that it's marked and it's not airworthy to fly. And we want to make sure that we leave the plane in good or better condition. If you had to take the seat back out in the front of the K-21 or moving cushions around or whatever, make sure you put it back the way you found it. If you have extra ballast, don't set it's the pilot's responsibility to make sure it's set up to land or to fly, weight and ballast, but let's try to make sure that they're in a good position. So if something happens, they missed that, they're in a safer position. So you want to stow that extra ballast in the trailer or in the wagon. And then it's also your responsibility as pilot, whether you're a student pilot or seasoned pro, you've got to make your fill out online on the website to fill in your flying time. It's not your instructor's responsibility. It's your responsibility to get that in there. And I think that's about it. Thanks a lot.